At the sidelines of the India Economic Conclave, we also did speak to none other than Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, who also spoke about the commodity cycle, the way commodity cycle is moving on the higher side. Let's hear out that exclusive interaction.
At the moment, I think the commodities, I think we are going into a very big commodity bull run, and which is going to last for the next 5-7 years. So I think at the moment commodity stocks are the best bets.
Sure.
Especially steel, and I want to make a SEBI declaration that I'm very much interested in the commodity.
Yeah, everything is being disclosed and disclaimed.
No, I have to sure. I have to give it.
Sure.
Right, I am very bullish on the commodities.
Right, let's go across to Amit Dixit. Amit, let's talk about what's happening in the steel pack, what's happening in the prices space. Firstly, what do you make of the news flow in the April hike that has come in? Do you think that is something which will happen quite soon?
No, so I mean, look at it, the April hike was overdue, I would say, looking at how global steel prices have moved, and compared to the fact that, ever since China came out of New Year, so the prices, export price out of China has gone up by almost $100 a ton, which is roughly 15%. If you see Indian steel prices, they remain quite static. In fact, in March, producers took a price cut of roughly 1,000 to 1,500 rupees. Now, if you 3 months, Indian steel prices have not gone anywhere. In fact, we have remained stable, even in traders market. However, if you look at the global steel prices, and I'm not comparing, US and Europe, which are in their own trajectory, I'm comparing the geographies such as South Korea, Japan, and even regional prices. So they have all gone up by 16-17%. So we have clearly lagged. Having said that, in the past, what we saw that the landed cost of imports was supposed to be like at par with domestic price, but now, as a result of dichotomous movement, we have seen that the landed cost of imports, even from countries such as South Korea, are at a 10% discount, 10% premium. So clearly, you have a good headroom for companies to take price hikes. Now, it depends on two things. One is the appetite in the domestic market, and second, how much competitive they would like to remain with respect to exports. So I believe that we have got a good headroom, not only of domestic steel price hike, but also there is a separate news flow on the possible hike in automotive contracts. Now, both of them are playing a major positive role and a major push, essentially on the sentiment.
Hi Amit, this is Mubina here joining in. You mentioned two things. One is, of course, that there is headroom for domestic players to increase their prices, and the second part is domestic appetite. So I want to focus on that bit because while steel companies will be more than happy to take those price hikes, do you think that the domestic environment would sort of restrict the quantum of price hikes? We have had Mr. Nitin Gadkari talk about this. We've had a lot of consumer durable companies, steel consuming companies complain about this, and the fact that we're also at staring at a bit of a steel shortage. So do you think that that the landscape currently would sort of limit how much hike in prices steel companies would take?
No, that's a good point. Now, that's why I mentioned there are two parts to it. One is the domestic market and second is export market. So if you look at export market, what we have seen that the allocations that are being made to exports was around, in January it was roughly 11%, but with domestic demand remaining, on softer side, we had export allocation increasing to almost 25% by some of these steel players. Now, this is very interesting because previously exports were at a discount to the domestic realization. But now, as we see, the export realizations have moved up more. So essentially, I am actually seeing it for the first time that export realization is higher than domestic. So really, companies can actually export and make similar kind of money. Why I say similar kind of money? Because freight rates have also moved up. So essentially, if you are not getting good realization in domestic market, you can get a good realization in overseas market. So in Vietnam, for instance, you are getting $800 per ton. In Europe, you are getting upwards of $900 per ton. So clearly, it's a situation for it's a win-win situation for steel guys. If the domestic market demand revives, they can supply in domestic market. Else, of course, overseas market is there, which is far more margin accretive.
Yeah, I think you rightly mentioned that. I think this is the first time that we are seeing that export realizations are, turning out to be a bit more lucrative for some of these companies. You know what, Amit, I would request you to stay on with us because, I would like to ask you now about a transaction that has recently taken place between JSW Steel and BPCL. If our viewers are just tuning in, let me bring on Bob Priyanka Iyer to sort of, revisit that story, which has just got the nod from the COC on Friday. So Priyanka, with this transaction, JSW becomes the largest steel player in India.
Well, yes, after we reported on Friday that JSW Steel and the lenders are likely to close the deal on Bhushan Power and Steel, JSW finally announced that they have completed the acquisition of Bhushan Power and Steel under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. Now, what we understand is that this entire arrangement that lenders and JSW Steel had come to mainly because of the litigations that are going on in the Supreme Court, which was delaying the deal, which is why JSW said that they will be transferring the deal amount to an escrow account, and that transfer of amount has been done to complete the implementation of the resolution plan. The deal amount stands at around 19,350 crores, which was transferred to an escrow account, which is being handled by Punjab National Bank, which was the lead banker in this case. We understand that this was the acquisition was done through a subsidiary, Piombino Steel. It was completed via an SPV that also raised short-term loans. So basically, the funding was a mix of debt as well as equity. The internal accruals stood at around 8,550 crores. The debt that was gotten was around 11,000 crores, and we understand from sources that JSW Steel has secured loans from State Bank of India, Bank of Baroda to fund this deal. Now remember, this entire acquisition makes two important steps for JSW Steel. One is that it marks their entry into the eastern market, and the steel maker with a total capacity of 21.5 MTPA at this point in time, because BPSL added a capacity of 2.5 MTPA for the company. So of course, after 2018 is when they got the expression of interest, and now they have come through to a conclusion to the deal. It is a big move for both the lenders as well as JSW Steel.
Thanks, Priyanka, for that. By the way, a slip of tongue on my side, BPSL, not BPCL. But Amit, wanted to get in your take on this transaction by JSW Steel. I mean, a company of repute, and we've seen experiments of this kind where one of these big guys like a Tata Steel or JSW have taken over an IDC asset and managed to turn it around. Take a look at a Bhushan Steel and Power, which Tata Steel took over. A good turnaround over there. Monet Ispat, which JSW took over, and now there's yet another one, BPSL, a long drawn one, but it's finally succeeded. How do you think it would enhance JSW's portfolio? Do you think that there could be a blip in terms of the financial metrics for JSW for the next few quarters as they try to sort of integrate BPSL's operations into its own?
See, one thing is that JSW's record is impeccable, at least in domestic markets, in integrating the assets. So they have been very successful in doing so in the past, no doubt about that. The second point is that also gives them entry into eastern side of India that they were vying for quite a bit of time. And do remember they have secured iron ore mines in Odisha. So they should be able to improve the economics of this asset. Now that said, at this point in time, we have really very limited financials of the company. We still don't know what the EBITDA is like and how much the production they did, for instance. So not really able to comment on easy EBITDA side of it as far as the valuation goes. But even if you look at asset-based valuation, I think it is a little bit on steeper side at this point in time. So to that extent, I think there is an issue on valuation. But having said that, in my view, JSW would try to keep it off the balance sheet. They would try to keep a structure so as the debt doesn't come. There is a very limited resource on their own balance sheet. It will be similar like Monnet equity-based accounting. So I believe that JSW should be able to do it very soon, and hence it would be a good asset for them. It depends on how they will be able to turn it around. But looking at their past track record, I believe they will be able to do it. But getting an asset at a steep valuation always gives you an elongated payback period. So that is something which I would watch out for.
All right. Well, great, Amit. Glad we got in your view on this as well. Thanks so much for joining us today on the show. Well, with that and with the news that, of course, like I mentioned, the metal space today is contributing the most to the massive uptick we're witnessing in the markets, we'll take a very short break.